Welcome back to the channel. Here we are in the garage. Got the 06 in here. I ended up swapping the 68 for the 06, so this thing's back out here where the tools are and stuff, so I don't have to be running back and forth like we were for the intake manifold and the underdrive pulleys. We ended up selling the intake manifold, the underdrive pulleys, and the cold air intake. Obviously none of those three units we can use with the new product we're bolting on. We have a TVS 2300 Supercharger from VMP here that we're going to be putting on this thing. We're going to be roughly in the 550 range, somewhere in there. But you never know. You know, maybe this bottom end lets out and we build a motor for this one and go for 700-800. So here we are. We're already ahead a little bit in the instruction manual. I think it's 87 or 85 pages. We're already ahead with some of the parts that we pulled off. But let's keep continuing on going and get this thing bolted up. Got about 4 or 5 hours tonight we'll throw at it. I'm assuming it's going to be 8 to 10 hour install time. So we might get halfway there tonight and then finish it up tomorrow or the next day. Let's get on it. First step after removing the intake and that kind of stuff is pull the computer. So you saw me pull the battery, a couple 8mm bolts on there, pull the computer out so we can send this back to get the flash in it, and let's see what we got to do next. Sorry, the heater's on a little bit, so it might be a little bit noisy, but okay, so we've got the intake manifold out of place, we've got the cold air intake out, we have the computer out, and now we're going to go ahead and pull the alternator and then go at the coolant bypass between the two cylinder heads there. Let's go ahead and get that done. So the alternator's out of the way now. Now we're going to go ahead and drain the coolant and pull the upper rad hoses off so we can keep going a little bit further into it. Let's go ahead and get that drained. Alright, so we got the coolant drained and we have the coolant bypass that goes right here. We got that out of place. Now we're going to go ahead and remove these two heater hoses back here that go to the passenger side cylinder head. So there's one little stud, and then we disconnect the constant tension clamp at the back and pull those out. And then right up here on the front of the block there's one little steel bracket. We're going to go ahead and pull that out of the way as well. So we're going to go ahead now and we're going to pull off the serpentine belt tensioner. It's 3 little bolts. That's this guy right here. We're going to go ahead and get that out of the way and continue on with what it says. So the next step in our instructions are to remove these 2 little ears right here, right off. We're going to go ahead and get these smoothed out right down with this housing. So what we'll do is we'll end up cutting them like this, cutting them here, and then we'll just grind it flush. So we just went ahead and modified the VMV hose. That's this little hose here that'll go into this solenoid. And what we're doing now is there's a brake booster line. You can see the little black hose hanging down right here. That's going to come off, and this short hose that's coming forward to the fuel pressure regulator, we're going to go ahead and shorten that up 45 millimeters. So we'll go ahead and pull that off. We'll disconnect the end that's closest to the side, to the engine side, and we're going to cut 45 millimeters off the short hose. I left the fuel pressure regulator on this hose, so we're just going to go ahead and measure from the end. We'll cut 45 millimeters right here. So that's going to come off. We're going to take off this little clip. And that come off. And lastly, we're going to remove this end of the hose. So there you go. Since I still have fuel and everything obviously in the car, I'm going to go ahead, as you can see here, I just did a piece of paper towel with some packing tape on both of these. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing on that so we don't get any vapors or anything going on in here. I don't want to smell like fuel. And we'll continue on with the project. Lastly, what we're going to do to modify that brake line there is we're going to go ahead and move the T closer to the brake booster 80 millimeters. So all you're going to do is cut that, we'll make a little slip, pull it off the T, shove the T back in, and we're done for now on that project. So we have two heater lines, these two here that we disconnected from the firewall. One of them comes forward into the back of the water pump, and we're going to retain that one and cut the top one. There's two little steel brackets. We're going to go ahead and cut those and get those out of the way. My lower hose, the one that comes from the water pump through the valley and then back up through here, it's pretty rusty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and order a new one. I don't want to go ahead and get all of this thing bolted back on and then find out that we have a leak. So I'll go ahead and I'll grab that, and then we'll keep going with the project. I just can't put the lower intake or anything on until I get that hose put in there, right? Obviously. So we'll go ahead and get that stuff out of the way, and then since I'm going to be replacing that lower anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the whole thing out. So here you go. You can see that this long hose, this just goes over two little O-rings on the back of the water pump. I'm going to go ahead and replace those two O-rings, and it's really rusty right here in this area where it goes to start necking up. So what we would do if we were keeping it is we'll cut this bracket right here, and then we'll cut this one to separate the two hoses. Like I said, since I'm going to replace it, I'm just going to throw them both in the trash and we'll replace it. Next on the list is a couple wiring issues, so we're going to go ahead and extend some of these wires here for the mass airflow sensor, the ETC and the TPS sensors. We're going to go ahead and modify all that wiring. So we'll go and pull it out of all the looming, and we'll get ready to do that. So we went ahead and got the wiring modified. What we had to do was on the passenger side here, we had to extend one of the harnesses, the little clip here that went on the front of the motor. It had to go all the way up and then across and then out just on the driver's side here where it will connect again. So we went ahead and did that. I modified the two clips on the driver's side that we had to, and I got the coolant bottle right there put in place, and that's going to be for the heat exchanger. So we got those all done now. Now we have to go ahead and pull the front bumper off of this thing. So we'll go ahead and we'll clean all the tools off. We'll pull this top panel right here. There's a couple bolts that hold in the top. We'll unclip the wiring harness for this light and that light there. And then there's a couple bolts from the back side in the wheel wells that we're going to go ahead and take out. And we can get this heat exchanger installed. Let's go ahead and do that. So we got that upper closeout panel off right here. Now we're going to go ahead, lift the car up, pull the two front wheels off. We can pull the inner fenders out and pull the front bumper. There's 2 or 3 bolts on each side facing forward, and then 5 little push pins, the little Christmas tree clips going in the inner fender. We'll get those off, get the bumper off, and then we can go ahead with the heat exchanger. Part of it that I will say is we're not going to go ahead and put the bumper back on right away. I have some other stuff that we're going to go ahead and do while the bumper's off, some suspension components and stuff. So we'll go and we'll finish the blower, and then we'll wait and we'll start doing the suspension and whatnot. We'll go through all that with you guys, but just so you know, it's not going to be, you know, back to the way it is. Just take it all back off for suspension or whatever. So let's go ahead and get the car up and do that kind of stuff. So we got the front bumper off. It wasn't too bad. There are a couple extra bolts in there that our car had with that little chin splitter. They bolted it through some dumb stuff, so it is what it is on there. Now we're going to go ahead, and I pulled the styrofoam off this crash bar right here, and we're going to go ahead and loosen the 4 bolts on both sides, get that bar out of the way so we can go ahead and get the small heat exchanger put in place. So let's go ahead and get that off, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the heat exchanger. So I'm going to thread these bolts in, just a couple threads on each side, and that's going to help us not lose them. So we went ahead and painted the front of the frame rail with rust stop paint. There was a little bit of rust back there behind that crash bar. I installed the 2 longer bolts on the inside of each side there, and the low temp radiator slides in the back on those 2 bolts, and you put a nut to hold it to that cross member. So now what I have to do is take the little template and drill out the mount on this side, the driver's side. There's a little mount that they use when they go to ship the vehicles on a truck or a train or whatever, and it's right in front of the wheel there. It's just a little hole. So what we're going to do is drill 2 holes in that, and that's going to allow us to mount the water pump that's going to pump water from the intercooler on the motor all the way down here to the heat exchanger. It'll cool the coolant, and it'll come back up into the bottle and then back out. So what we're going to do is drill those 2 holes right now, and we're going to go ahead and mount up that water pump. Let me grab that thing and show you what it looks like. So here it is. It's a little Bosch pump, and you have your in and your out here. So what we're going to do is drill that bracket for these 2 holes here. We're going to put that on, and we can run the wiring. It's got one little wiring clip right here. We can run that wiring up into the engine bay. But that's all you use to move the coolant, like I said, from the little radiator, the heat exchanger here, all the way up. And this is a pretty common unit. A lot of OEMs use it. You know, Ford and all them for, you know, Shelby Mustangs or Challenger or that kind of stuff. So this is a pretty common piece. They're not super expensive or anything if anything ever did go wrong. And all it does is move that coolant. Let's go ahead and get this thing mounted. So we're missing a couple parts that we're gonna have it coming in on order. So we'll go ahead, and on the next episode, we'll jump into the brakes and suspension on the build. And then hopefully by that time, the parts come in and we can jump right back on the supercharger install. We'll see you next time.